Welcome, if you identify yourself for the record and tell us what's on your mind.
I'm Matt Young.
I'm Tiffany Young.
I basically have something typed up and I'll just read it, I guess, and stop me if you like.
Right.
The public school system works for some. It did not work for us. Our son is smart, quirky, gifted, and learns differently. Our son was struggling in school, in tears often, not doing his work. His grades weren't the best. He was losing weight. He was full of anxiety. He tried to run away from school more than once. He developed a terrible facial tic, and it was heartbreaking for us all. Almost every day, we would get a call from the school. We need a meeting. We need another specialist. We need a different diagnosis. We need another label. You need to try another medication. These were terrible times for all of us. My wife and I didn't know what to do. Linden Town School was anxious for us to sign up for services. Sign here and we will help you. We were under the presumption that these people were experts and their biggest motivation was the best outcome for our child. Knowing what we know now, we know that wasn't the case. Linden Town School was all too happy to have us sign up for services. They pulled their son out of the classroom often, pressured us to medicate. They made him wear a weighted vest and squeeze a bright-colored ball. They said he needed specialists, and they spent tens of thousands of dollars. Everything they did made him feel different and increased his anxiety and his fight-or-flight response. They physically restrained him many, many times. We were being pressured to put our son on a medicine designed for high blood pressure. They wanted to try it for its sedative effect. They told us, you need to do something or we're going to do an alternative placement. Both our family physician and therapist advised not to put our son on medication as he had low blood pressure at the time, presumably from his lack of appetite. Furthermore, they didn't think it would be beneficial and could be harmful. After refusing to put our son on a medication of the school's choice, we were advised we needed to have a meeting to discuss alternative placement. They informed us of the meeting on a Friday that we were going to discuss alternative placement Monday. We later found out what alternative placement means. We received 4 or 5 choices that the district had picked for us. Some of these schools were far away, some out of state, and all of them were full of children that exhibited extreme behavior, including violence, drug and alcohol abuse, sexual deviance, and others. At the time, our son was extremely impressionable, quite vulnerable, and exposure to these behaviors would have been devastating. When we asked the gentleman from the district in charge of special ed at Linden Town School about the potential that these schools would harm our son, he told us we could correct the problem with more therapy. Ironically, the district acted alone in its decision for an alternative placement, kicking our son to the curb. When we signed up for the district's program, we were told we had a team consisting not only of teachers and paid school officials, but also doctors, therapists, coaches, family and friends, and lo and behold, even us, his parents. When we refused to send our son into a situation that would harm him, we had no place to go. When Linden Town School kicked our son to the curb, we really didn't know what to do, but we did know one thing: we would not put him in harm's way. In our last meeting with the district, we asked about the possibility of sending him to a small independent school. We had spoken to several parents who had seen their children flourish. Many of them had not only struggled, but suffered at the public schools. The district was steadfast that our son needed a therapeutic environment. They loved this term and used it often. It's incredible to us that sending a young, vulnerable, impressionable child to a school where the police visit often is chock full of others with a violent history, drug use, and that's a therapeutic environment. All others on the team, all others, thought a small independent school might make sense and was definitely our best possibility. Our son's doctor, therapist, coaches, family, friends, and his parents wanted to try a small independent school. The district refused to consider it, and they looked and looked for reasons not to allow it. From the fact that small independent schools didn't offer special ed, he didn't need special ed, but more on that later. And as usual, the district said he needed a therapeutic environment. Educational law does require that a child receives a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. We had gone, we had gone to our local school board to explain our plight. The district superintendent was in attendance. She advised that the local school board were merely lay people and they were not qualified to make such a decision. We told the school board that we would try to get a legal opinion, but we needed a little time. The board agreed to table our decision, so we did not attend the next meeting. To our astonishment, the school board voted not to pay our son's tuition at the next meeting without our attendance. Ironically, the head of the school board was a former Linden Town school teacher, and the one controlling the meeting was the former school superintendent. Having no real alternative, we decided to contact a couple of local independent schools, Riverside and Thaddeus Stevens School. We set up a day to shadow at both schools. He went to Riverside first, and then he went to Thaddeus Stevens School. My wife and I were completely upfront with the administration of both of these schools. We told them everything that was going on with our son. Thaddeus Stevens School wanted our son to shadow for several days so they could understand him and his behaviors, and they wanted to make sure they could adequately serve him. The director of Thaddeus Stevens School communicated with us often. She described our son as quirky, a thinker, and a joy. After several days, they accepted him, and he's been enrolled there ever since. 3 years later, our son is thriving. He takes no medication. His grades are fantastic. He's had no major issues with discipline, and certainly no physical restraints. He has a great group of friends. He developed a great sense of humor. He just had a major part in a school play. Played a solo on the trumpet in the school concert. He sings karaoke. He's on the math counts team. He just won the DAR writing contest for the entire state at his grade level. He was the leading scorer on his hockey team, and his facial tic is all but gone.
It's good you read all that good stuff.
Yes, it's true. He's sleeping, he's eating well, and most of all, he's happy, he's thriving, and he's proud of his accomplishments. It's ironic when I hear that these independent schools only take the cream of the crop. Seeing my son's file from Linden Town School, I would hardly say there was any cherry picking going on. I also hear that these little independent schools turn kids away. I suppose there are special circumstances where these schools cannot meet the needs of everyone. But that is true with public schools as well. And ironically, in our situation, the public school turned our son away. The year after our son was summarily dismissed from Linden Town School, our daughter was written up several times. On one of these occasions, she was on a field trip to the Berry Granite Quarry. They were told to take one little piece of granite for a souvenir. She took two. She took one for her little sister. They stood there, watched her do it, and they would later write her up. Soon after, they would call, and they wanted us to sign her up for a 504. And I think our response was something like, over our dead bodies. The following year, we voted no confidence in Linden Town School and enrolled our two daughters at the Thaddeus Stevens School as well. My wife and I worked very hard and pay what seems like a tremendous amount of taxes. The district would have paid for our son to attend one of their inappropriate choices with federal money. The tuition was at least $36,000, and in some cases much more per year, plus transportation. The school he attends now is a little over $12,000, about the same amount as the public school. The district has found a legal way to not pay for his education. We tried to have our case heard in court, but it was thrown out on a technicality by a state-paid hearing officer. If you unilaterally enroll your child in an independent school after leaving public school, the statute of limitations goes from 2 years to 90 days. Why? The district is the one who unilaterally removed our son. The district said they couldn't pay for our son's tuition because the independent school didn't offer special education, and the independent school wasn't a therapeutic environment. The proof is in the pudding. Our son did not need special education. He did not need a 401, and he did not need their definition of a therapeutic environment. One of the most incredible parts to this story, our son's education and well-being was not what was important to the district. The district was politically motivated. The best outcome for our son was not part of their equation. We do understand that unlimited funds are not available. And ironically, we were asking for less services. My family does not live in a school choice town. We are a stone's throw away from the town line. We know several families who have had experience similar to ours, maybe not as stunning, but just as compelling. Some of them have moved to school choice towns because it's the only way they can get their children into an appropriate school. Some have literally sold the family homestead so that they can get their children an education that they need. As a rule, these are not wealthy people looking for some elitist boutique education. They are ordinary people trying to give their children what they need. Frankly, it's absurd that a family must move to a town to get their children the education they need. Many times, parents do in fact know what is best for our children. It is, however, becoming increasingly clear enrollment is down and public school system will stop at nothing to make kids attend. This is not an attack on the public schools. Many children do quite well there, and there are some wonderful teachers. But as enrollments have gotten smaller, we've seen more and more attacks on our right to choose what is best for our children. Please allow school choice towns to continue. Furthermore, I ask that you loosen the restrictions so that families such as ours are allowed to give our children what they need instead of attacking these private or independent schools. The Vermont Department of Education could learn a lot from them.
And Mrs. Young, do you want to add to that?
Sure. I would start by saying I spent most of my life as a very strong proponent of public schools and public education. My grandmother was a teacher at the St. Johnsbury School for 32 years. My mother was a teacher at Linden Town School for 29 years. I was on that side of the fight. I stood for teachers, and I did that pretty much my whole life. Both of my mother and my grandmother, and now my cousin is the third generation to win the NEA Teacher of the Year award. So, I mean, I really feel like I was on that side of the fight. When my son was in kindergarten, they approached us about opening a BST. We started with a BST. And behavioral support team. By the time we hit first grade, we were up to a 504. By the time he hit third grade on the third floor, we were up to a full IEP. He slowly snowballed, bigger, bigger, bigger. By the time we hit the end of his tenure at that school, he was doing multiple times a week physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. I was on our dollar taking him out of the classroom once a week to go meet with a therapist in St. Johnsbury and then drive him back to school. This was all time out of the classroom. He was spending very little time in the classroom at all. We were told that he was being taken out preventatively because they thought he might not react well to what they were going to be doing. And the physical restraints were very difficult to endure. One day at a meeting at the school, I got a call, can you come right now? I mean, it was very hard for me to even do my job. My job does involve me driving out of town, and I felt like I couldn't do that. I could never be more than 15 minutes away from the school. During his time there, he spent some time with a one-on-one. There was about a 3-month period where my mother and I each took turns spending all day in the classroom with him. So, I mean, we had a ton of support going on. So one day, I'm in a meeting with some members of the team at the school. I can hear him crying on the other side of the door, help me, help me. So I get up to go in, they tell me I can't go in there. I said, well, yes, I can go in there, I can hear him. And when I got in there, 2 adults had him pinned to the wall, and one of them had their hand around his throat. So our decision to pull him out, it wasn't even our decision to pull him out, but it became an absolute necessity for him to leave that environment. And most of what was going on with him was a fight or flight. It was an attempt to escape. He's very happy where he is now. And I hate to see that school struggling just to exist, which I feel like with the attacks on school choice, they're struggling to exist. We're not from school choice town, but many of the students who are there are. And the school does depend on school choice towns, just for its mere existence. I felt like as we were going through the special education system, we had very little power. We had very little decision-making power. They were pressing us with their choice of pediatrician, their choice of therapists, their choice of medications. And we were told point blank, try it our way or you'll get kicked out. And ultimately, when we did say, no, we can't do that anymore, we did try the first 3 medications that they wanted us to try that were presented to us. None of them amounted to what they wanted. And they all had pretty bad side effects for him. When the fourth one was put before us, we said no. And one of the girls working with him said, you have to, or they'll kick him out. And they did. So when we came back from February break that year, he literally had no placement. He had no enrollment, no school. I called the school and asked what his status was. And then on the 7th phone call, I connected with somebody, and she told me that he was absent. And I said, well, he doesn't have to be. We'll be right up. No, nope, you can't come. So that was very hard. He had literally no enrollment. And I'm so thankful to the school where he is now, because they gave him the self-confidence. They showed him what an amazing kid he is, because he is. And he has friends, and I'm just so proud of him and so thankful.